15 Forgotten Wrestling Rivalries, the Golden Age's Most Overlooked Battles, Part 2. Before The Rock and Stone Cold, before Hogan and Andre, before the rivalries you know by heart, there were battles so brutal, so intense, that they literally caused riots in arenas across the world. One rivalry saw a wrestler's ear ripped off on live television. Another ended with a man's wife losing her hair as the ultimate price. These are the forgotten wrestling rivalries that shaped everything you know about modern wrestling, yet 99% of fans have never heard their names. I'm about to take you through 15 of the most violent, most personal, and most historically significant rivalries that time forgot. By the end of this video, you'll understand why modern wrestling exists the way it does, and you'll never look at a cage match the same way again. Let's dive in. But before we begin our countdown, if you're a fan of wrestling history and want more deep dives like this, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. Now, let's start our countdown. Number 15. Verne Gagne versus Fritz von Erich. Starting at number 15, we have a rivalry that represented the ultimate clash of American hero versus foreign villain during wrestling's territorial era. Verne Gagne, the technical wrestling master and AWA champion, faced off against Fritz von Erich, whose German heel character made him one of the most hated men in wrestling. This rivalry was more than just good versus evil. It was a masterclass in storytelling during an era when wrestling psychology was everything. Fritz von Erich, whose real name was Jack Adkisson, portrayed a ruthless German villain complete with the Iron Claw finishing maneuver that supposedly could crush a man's skull. Gagne, with his legitimate amateur wrestling credentials and all-American image, was the perfect foil. What made this rivalry particularly significant was how it established the template for nationalist storylines that would dominate wrestling for decades. The matches between Gagne and von Erich throughout the 1960s drew massive crowds across the AWA territory, with fans genuinely believing they were watching an American patriot defend honor against a foreign menace. The technical excellence displayed in their matches set standards that influenced countless wrestlers who came after them. While footage is scarce and the rivalry has faded from mainstream memory, it laid the groundwork for the AWA's success throughout the 1960s and 70s.
Number 14. Killer Kowalski versus Pat O'Connor.
At number 14, we have a rivalry born from one of the most controversial moments in wrestling history, and it didn't even involve the two main competitors. Killer Kowalski had already cemented his reputation as one of wrestling's most feared villains, especially after the infamous ear incident with Yukon Eric. But his feud with Pat O'Connor, one of the smoothest scientific wrestlers of his generation, took his heel persona to another level. The rivalry gained massive notoriety in late June 1958 when they faced off in Boston, with legendary boxer Jack Dempsey serving as special guest referee. During the match, Kowalski accidentally kicked Dempsey in the diaphragm. The former heavyweight boxing champion had to be hospitalized. Now, both Dempsey and Kowalski said it was completely accidental. There was no malicious intent. But the media ran with it, and Kowalski's reputation as an uncontrollable monster was sealed forever. What's fascinating is how this incident overshadowed what was actually an excellent wrestling rivalry. O'Connor was a multiple-time NWA World Champion and one of the most respected performers of his era. His technical mastery against Kowalski's intimidating brawling style created compelling matches that drew huge crowds throughout the northeastern United States. This rivalry exemplified how wrestling could create mainstream headlines and how a single moment, even an accidental one, could define a performer's entire career. The Jack Dempsey incident is still referenced today when discussing wrestling's ability to blur the lines between reality and performance.
Number 13. Antonino Rocca versus Dr. Jerry Graham.
Coming in at number 13 is a rivalry that literally caused a riot at the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden. Antonio Rocca was wrestling's first true crossover Latino superstar. The Puerto Rican community in New York didn't just love Rocca, they worshipped him. He was their hero, their representative in a sport dominated by other ethnicities. His high-flying, acrobatic style was revolutionary for the 1950s, and his charisma made him one of the biggest draws in wrestling history. Dr. Jerry Graham, on the other hand, was a bleached blonde villain who specialized in making audiences hate him. As a member of the notorious Graham brothers, he knew exactly how to push fans to their breaking point. In 1957, their rivalry reached a boiling point at Madison Square Garden. During their match, Rocca was winning clean. He'd already taken 2 straight falls and had the Bruiser, Graham's partner, in a torture rack-style backbreaker submission. When the Bruiser tapped out, the match should have been over. But Dr. Jerry Graham refused to accept it. He rushed the ring and brutally attacked Rocca, continuing the assault even after the decision had been made. The Puerto Rican fans in attendance couldn't take it anymore. They rushed the ring en masse. Chairs flew. Violence erupted. It became one of the most infamous wrestling riots in wrestling history. This wasn't just a wrestling match gone wrong. It was a cultural moment. It showed the power wrestling had over ethnic communities and how personal these storylines could become. The riot at MSG became legendary, and the Rocca-Graham rivalry showed promoters everywhere just how much money could be made when fans truly believed in their heroes.
Number 12. Jack Briscoe versus Dory Funk Jr.
At number 12, we have what many consider the pinnacle of scientific wrestling in the 1970s, Jack Briscoe versus Dory Funk Jr. This rivalry was the epitome of professional wrestling executed to perfection. You had Jack Briscoe, the young lion with impeccable amateur wrestling credentials from Oklahoma State University, challenging Dory Funk Jr., the smooth, experienced NWA World Heavyweight Champion who represented technical excellence. Both men were scientific wrestlers at the absolute peak of their game. Their matches weren't about blood and violence. They were about holds, reversals, near falls, and pure wrestling psychology. And yet, they drew massive crowds wherever they went. One of their events at the legendary Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis is particularly noteworthy. The venue had a capacity of around 11,000 fans, but reportedly turned away an additional 4,000 who couldn't get in. That's the drawing power these two technical masters had. The rivalry culminated on July 20th, 1973, when Briscoe finally defeated Harley Race in Houston to capture the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. While his ultimate victory came against Race, the foundation was built through his legendary series with Funk. What made this rivalry historically significant was how it proved that pure wrestling, real mat-based technical wrestling, could still be a massive draw in an era when the business was beginning to emphasize more spectacle and personality. Briscoe and Funk showed that wrestling skill alone could captivate audiences and sell out arenas.
Number 11. Vader versus Stan Hansen.
Number 11 takes us to Japan for one of the stiffest, most brutal rivalries in wrestling history. Big Van Vader versus Stan Hansen. When these two super heavyweights collided on February 10, 1990, at the AJPW vs. NJW Supercard show, fans witnessed something truly special. Vader was the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, a 400-pound monster who could move like a cruiserweight. Hansen was the nearly blind cowboy from Texas who legitimately couldn't see well but hit harder than almost anyone in wrestling history. Their infamous match became legendary for its sheer brutality. These weren't worked punches. Hansen and Vader were legitimately hitting each other with everything they had. The match was so stiff, so violent, that it set a new standard for strong-style wrestling in Japan. Both men had incredible careers in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Hansen had famously teamed with Bruiser Brody and would later team with Dan Spivey and even Vader himself. But when they were opponents, something special happened. Just 2 months later, on April 13, 1990, Hansen appeared at the Wrestling Summit in the Tokyo Dome, facing Hulk Hogan in a cross-promotional dream match. But it's his battles with Vader that defined his late career legacy. What makes this rivalry particularly forgotten in Western wrestling history is that it primarily took place in Japan. American audiences largely missed these incredible matches, and they've been overlooked in favor of more mainstream rivalries. But make no mistake, when it comes to pure physicality and hard-hitting action, Vader vs. Hansen set the standard.
Number 10. Raven versus Shane Douglas. At number 10, we enter the Extreme Wrestling era with one of ECW's most psychologically complex rivalries, Raven versus Shane Douglas. This was one of the first major rivalries for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship, and it established Raven as a main event player. Shane Douglas, the arrogant franchise of ECW, found himself in an unfamiliar position. He was the underdog, trying to recapture his championship from the cerebral, manipulative Raven. What made this rivalry fascinating was the psychology involved. Raven wasn't just a violent brawler. He was a mind game master who surrounded himself with his Raven's Nest faction, including Stevie Richards and the Blue Meanie. He manipulated situations and people, making it nearly impossible for Douglas to get a clean shot at him. Douglas, who was normally the dominant, cocky villain in ECW, struggled against Raven's tactics. Despite multiple attempts, Douglas couldn't recapture his championship from Raven during this rivalry. This actually established Raven's credibility as world champion and set him up for his legendary feud with Tommy Dreamer. The rivalry concluded at WrestlePalooza 1997 when Raven lost to Tommy Dreamer and legitimately left ECW for WCW. After 2 years in the middle of WCW's card, Raven returned to ECW on September 3, 1999 on ECW on TNN, showing that the Extreme promotion was his true home. While not as violent as some ECW rivalries, the Raven-Douglas feud showed that Extreme Wrestling could also tell sophisticated psychological stories. It's been overshadowed by more famous ECW rivalries, but it was crucial in establishing the promotion's main event scene in the mid-1990s.
Number 9. The Hollywood Blondes versus Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas. Number 9 features one of the most underrated tag team rivalries of the 1990s. The Hollywood Blondes versus Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas. In late 1992, two genuine heroes in Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas captured the WCW World Tag Team Championships. They represented everything good about professional wrestling: honor, respect, and incredible in-ring ability. But soon, they would face the arrogant duo of Stunning Steve Austin and Flyin' Brian Pillman, who dubbed themselves the Hollywood Blondes. Their first encounter came at the Clash of Champions in January 1993, and Steamboat and Douglas seemed poised to cut their cocky rivals down to size. That is until Austin smashed Douglas in the head with one of the championship belts. The Hollywood Blondes would defeat the champions in a non-title match in February 1993, building momentum for their title challenge. On March 27, 1993, on WCW Worldwide, the inevitable happened. While the referee was distracted trying to contain Shane Douglas from attacking Austin on the floor, Stunning Steve grabbed one of the title belts and blasted Steamboat in the skull, making it elementary for Pillman to score the pinfall victory. The Hollywood Blondes were your new WCW World Tag Team Champions. What's remarkable about this rivalry is how it established both Austin and Pillman as future main eventers. Austin would go on to become the biggest star in wrestling history. Pillman would revolutionize the concept of the loose cannon character before his tragic death. The Hollywood Blondes became one of the most beloved teams of the 90s, and their rivalry with the veteran team of Steamboat and Douglas gave them the credibility they needed. Sadly, WCW split the team up too early, robbing fans of what could have been years of classic tag team wrestling.
Number 8. Jerry Lawler versus Bill Dundee.
At number 8, we have Memphis Wrestling's definitive rivalry, the decades-long war between Jerry the King Lawler and Bill Dundee. This rivalry became the embodiment of the worked shoot, a feud based on perceived and sometimes openly shared hostility between two men that felt absolutely real to audiences. From 1977 until possibly sometime in the 2010s, knowing these two, Lawler and Dundee crossed paths in countless battles that defined Memphis wrestling. They were money as a tag team, effectively the mega powers of Memphis, the two most popular guys uniting to overcome overwhelming odds. But nothing compared when they collided against each other. The hatred felt genuine, the violence was real, and the stakes were always astronomical. It was under the CWA banner that the rivalry truly ignited in full force. In early July 1977, Dundee scored a shocking victory over Lawler, and the territory exploded. During a 10-week period, Lawler and Dundee headlined 9 times, with each match escalating the stakes beyond what had come before. What began with championships and cash on the line eventually escalated to automobiles, hair, and finally the hair of Dundee's wife Beverly. When Dundee lost his Southern Heavyweight title and his wife's hair in their ultimate encounter, it created one of the most memorable moments in Memphis wrestling history. The genius of this rivalry was its longevity. Most feuds burn hot and fade fast, but Lawler versus Dundee could be turned on and off over multiple decades. Whenever Memphis wrestling needed a guaranteed money draw, these two could pick up right where they left off. This rivalry has been forgotten by mainstream audiences because it was so regional. Memphis territory was insular and didn't get national exposure like WWF or later WCW. But for fans who lived through it, Lawler versus Dundee was as real as it got.
Number 7. Rick Rude versus Jake Roberts. Coming in at number 7 is one of WWF's most personal rivalries, Rick the Ravishing One versus Jake the Snake Roberts. This 1988 feud was deeply personal in a way that made audiences genuinely uncomfortable. Rude was the ultimate ladies' man who prided himself on seducing women everywhere he went. In this storyline, he set his sights on Jake Roberts' real-life wife, Cheryl. Rude would come to the ring and ask women to kiss him, positioning himself as an irresistible heartthrob. But when he began pursuing Cheryl Roberts specifically, Jake had seen enough. The storyline got so personal that Rude actually had an airbrushed image of Cheryl's face on his tights, a move that infuriated fans and made the rivalry feel uncomfortably real. Roberts and Rude battled throughout 1988, including a 15-minute draw at WrestleMania 4 that showcased their incredible chemistry. Jake later recalled their matches fondly. "I knew he was following me in the ring, letting me guide him. They were solid. I like solid, you know? That way there's no doubt about what I should sell and what I shouldn't sell." Their feud continued at Survivor Series 1988, where Roberts scored the pinfall victory in an elimination tag team match. The rivalry showed how personal storylines, when done correctly, could elevate both performers. What makes this rivalry forgotten is that it happened during the Hulk Hogan era, when everything not involving the Hulkster was somewhat overshadowed. Additionally, it took place between WrestleManias 4 and 5, a period often overlooked in WWF history. But make no mistake, Rude vs. Roberts was some of the best character-driven storytelling WWF did in the 1980s.
We're now at the halfway point of our countdown, and we're about to enter the elite tier of forgotten rivalries. If you're enjoying this deep dive into wrestling history, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the Wrestleverse. We release videos like this every week, uncovering the stories that shaped wrestling into what it is today. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, let's continue with number 6. Number 6. Bruiser Brody versus Abdullah the Butcher. At number 6, we have possibly the most violent rivalry in wrestling history. Bruiser Brody versus Abdullah the Butcher. Watching these two face each other was like witnessing King Kong battle Godzilla. Both men embodied the larger-than-life aspect of 1980s wrestling, and their encounters were the most brutal you'll ever see. These weren't choreographed wrestling matches, they were legitimate wars. Whether it was Puerto Rico, Japan, or world-class championship wrestling in Texas, Abdullah and Brody spilled each other's blood around the world. They were perfectly matched opponents. Both were wild brawlers who specialized in chaos and violence. Their legendary bloody encounters captured fans' imaginations globally. What made their matches unique was their unpredictability. Many of their encounters ended in no contests because the violence simply couldn't be contained within traditional match structures. They would brawl through crowds, into locker rooms, anywhere their battle took them. Brody was known as the ultimate free spirit in wrestling. He protected his character fiercely and never did clean jobs unless he respected you. Abdullah was the original Butcher, a character so terrifying that his mystique persists decades later. Tragically, Bruiser Brody was murdered in a locker room in Puerto Rico on July 17, 1988. Abdullah the Butcher was in Puerto Rico at the time of Brody's death, which added a dark, conspiratorial layer to how fans remember this rivalry. The circumstances surrounding Brody's death remain controversial and painful for wrestling fans who loved him. This rivalry represents an era of wrestling that simply couldn't exist today. Too violent, too unpredictable, too real. It's been somewhat forgotten because much of it took place outside the American mainstream, but for fans who witnessed it, Brody versus Abdullah was the absolute peak of hardcore wrestling.
Number 5. Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard. Number 5 brings us to one of the most brutal rivalries in NWA history. Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard for the United States Championship. This rivalry began in July 1985 and would span an incredible 130 recorded matches, From their first encounter as a part of a $50,000 battle royal in Greensboro, North Carolina, through their final match in Bloomington, Minnesota in 1986. Magnum TA was the young, handsome babyface with movie star looks and undeniable charisma. Tully Blanchard was the rich, arrogant heel with his manager Baby Doll by his side. They were perfect foils for each other. Their first major clash came in a July 1985 steel cage match where Magnum TA defended his NWA United States Championship against Blanchard. In a screwjob finish, Baby Doll slipped Tully a roll of quarters which he used to knock out Magnum and capture the championship. The title change ignited one of the hottest feuds in Jim Crockett Promotions. The rivalry built toward NWA Starrcade 1985, The Gathering, where they would settle their war in a steel cage under I Quit rules. This wasn't just another match, it was one of the most famous steel cage matches in wrestling history. What made this rivalry special was the intensity both men brought to every encounter. Whether it was match 1 or match 130, they gave everything. The psychology was perfect. You have the scrappy underdog with nothing to lose against the privileged heel who would do anything to win. Tragically, Magnum TA's career was cut short in October 1986 when he was severely injured in a car accident. He was being groomed to eventually become NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and many believed he would have been one of the biggest stars of the late 1880s. The fact that his career ended so abruptly makes this rivalry even more poignant. We never got to see what else Magnum TA could accomplish. The Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard feud is forgotten by newer fans because Magnum's career ended before WWE's national dominance, and much of the footage was regional. But those who witnessed it know it was one of the greatest rivalries of the 1980s.
Number 4. Ric Flair versus Terry Funk. At number 4, we have a rivalry that redefined what it meant to be a wrestling legend. Ric Flair versus Terry Funk in 1989. This rivalry began moments after Ric Flair's final match with Ricky Steamboat, where they had just completed their legendary trilogy of 5-star classics. Flair was exhausted, having left everything in the ring with Steamboat. That's when Terry Funk made his move, stomping on the Nature Boy and launching one of the most intense feuds of Flair's career. What made this unique was that Funk was 45 years old in 1989, an age when most wrestlers were winding down. But Funk came back with something to prove, adopting an unhinged, chainsaw-wielding maniac persona that was genuinely terrifying. This rivalry couldn't have been more different from Flair's technical masterpieces with Steamboat. Funk was there to fight, not wrestle. He targeted Flair's neck obsessively, hitting him with multiple neck breakers and even delivering a pile driver on the entrance ramp, an incredibly dangerous spot for that era. Everything built to November 15, 1989 at Clash of the Champions 9 for their legendary I Quit match. This wasn't about championships, it was about pride, respect, and proving who was the tougher man. The match was brutal. Funk continued his assault on Flair's neck, using every dirty trick he knew. But Flair, playing the valiant babyface, refused to quit. When Flair finally forced Funk to say, "I quit," you might think the story was over. But then came one of wrestling's greatest moments. Funk grabbed the microphone, and despite the protests of his manager Gary Hart, shook Ric Flair's hand and declared him an incredible man. It was a beautiful moment of mutual respect between two legends. That's when Gary Hart betrayed Funk, turning on his own client and revealing that even Funk's manager thought he'd gone too far. The post-match angle was almost as memorable as the match itself.
Flair vs. Funk in 1989 showed that wrestling could be artistic, as in the Steamboat series, or visceral and violent, as in this feud. It's a rivalry that's somewhat forgotten because it came right after the more celebrated Flair Steamboat trilogy, but it deserves equal recognition.
Number 3. The Fantastics versus the Sheepherders. The bronze medal position at number 3 goes to one of the most violent tag team rivalries in history, the Fantastics versus the Sheepherders in 1986. If you only know the Sheepherders from their later WWF run as the Bushwhackers, the comedy team who licked people and did the Bushwhacker Walk, prepare to be shocked. Throughout the 1980s, the Sheepherders were one of the most savage, bloodthirsty teams in professional wrestling. The Fantastics, composed of Tommy Rogers and Bobby Fulton, were the complete opposite. They were a pretty boy tag team with incredible aerial ability and technical skill. They looked like they belonged on a magazine cover, and they could make audiences feel sympathy like few others. This was Wrestling Booking 101. Take a talented team that can exude vulnerability at the right moment and pit them against an unhinged, blood-seeking monster team. The combination created magic. The Fantastics and Sheepherders met at the Crockett Cup in 1986, producing a match that Dave Meltzer awarded 5 stars in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. That match showcased everything great about mid-80s tag team wrestling: amazing teamwork, brutal violence, and emotional storytelling that made audiences believe every moment. The rivalry escalated to barbed wire matches that have to be seen to be believed. The Sheepherders would use anything as a weapon: chairs, chains, and most famously, a flagpole. They would bust the Fantastics open regularly, creating sympathy heat that drove crowds absolutely insane. The beauty of this rivalry was its perfect contrast. The Fantastics were the ultimate babyfaces, clean-cut, skilled, and sympathetic. The Sheepherders were the ultimate monsters, dirty, violent, and seemingly unbeatable through normal means. When the Fantastics would finally overcome the odds and defeat the Sheepherders, the crowd reactions were explosive. This rivalry has been largely forgotten because it primarily took place in the NWA territories before WWF's national dominance. Additionally, the Sheepherders' later comedy run as the Bushwhackers completely changed their public perception of them. Modern fans can't believe these comedic characters were once legitimately terrifying. The Fantastics versus the Sheepherders represents the peak of tag team wrestling in the Territorial era. Perfect psychology, intense violence, and storytelling that made audiences believe every moment.
Number 2. Larry Zbyszko versus Bruno Sammartino. The silver medal at number 2 belongs to perhaps the greatest betrayal angle in wrestling history before the NWO. Larry Zbyszko versus Bruno Sammartino in 1980. January 22, 1980 is a date that will forever live in infamy in wrestling history. On that night, Bruno Sammartino's protege, Larry Zbyszko, turned on his mentor in one of the most shocking betrayals the Northeast had ever witnessed. Bruno Sammartino was wrestling royalty. His first WWF Championship reign lasted nearly 8 years, 2,803 days, selling out Madison Square Garden repeatedly. His second reign added another 1,237 days. He was the biggest draw in wrestling history up to that point. And even in 1980, at the tail end of his career, he remained a beloved legend. Larry Zbyszko was Bruno's student, a technically gifted wrestler Bruno had taken under his wing. The wrestling world expected Zbyszko to eventually follow in Bruno's footsteps as a heroic champion. But Zbyszko had other plans. he betrayed Bruno in shocking fashion, turning heel and claiming he'd been living in Bruno's shadow for too long. The Northeast Territory had never seen anything like it, a student attacking his mentor in such a personal, vicious way. The betrayal ignited the most emotionally charged rivalry of Bruno's career. Until Hulk Hogan versus Andre at WrestleMania 3, this rivalry could be considered the most financially successful in Northeast wrestling history in terms of real box office receipts and fan interest. What's remarkable is that every single match they had was the main event, despite no world championship being on the line. That's how much draw power this rivalry had. Every event sold out completely. The rivalry reached its apex on August 9, 1980, in front of 36,295 fans at Shea Stadium for the third Showdown at Shea event. Their steel cage match was the main event, again with no championship involved, and is still referenced as the gold standard for grudge matches by many fans and wrestlers from that era. The psychology was perfect. You had the aging legend, the man who built the territory, fighting to defend his honor against the ungrateful student who betrayed everything Bruno represented. Every punch felt personal. Every near fall had the audience on the edge of their seats. This rivalry proved something crucial, that wrestling didn't need championships to draw massive crowds. What mattered was emotion, storytelling, and making the audience truly care about the outcome. Larry Zbyszko versus Bruno Sammartino has been somewhat forgotten because it happened in the transitional period between the territory era and national expansion. It wasn't in the WWF footage library that gets replayed constantly, and Bruno's most famous run was in the 60s and 70s. But those who lived through it know this was one of the greatest rivalries in wrestling history.
Number 1, Tommy Rich versus Buzz Sawyer. And finally, at number 1, we have a rivalry so violent, so personal, and so legendary that it literally defined Southern wrestling in the early 1980s. Tommy Rich versus Buzz Sawyer, culminating in the last Battle of Atlanta. This rivalry was the definition of Southern wrestling violence during the early 80s. Tommy Rich was Georgia's golden boy, handsome, athletic, and beloved by fans throughout the territory. Buzz Sawyer was a legitimate madman, unpredictable, violent, and genuinely dangerous. The rivalry truly ignited in early 1982, centered around the NWA Georgia Heavyweight Championship. On May 2, 1982, Buzz Sawyer defeated Tommy Rich for the title, marking the beginning of repeated, brutal encounters. But this wasn't a wrestling rivalry. It was a fight. Tommy Rich later described it was a fight every single night. He had a bad personality. He was tough. I just went in there and gave it back to him. What made this rivalry unique was its genuine intensity. Both men legitimately disliked each other, and that hatred came through in every match. The violence escalated weekly, with both men bleeding regularly and taking liberties with each other in the ring. The rivalry generated so much heat that NWA officials reportedly banned Rich and Sawyer from being in an arena together until they realized it was the only thing that could draw money. That's when they decided to end it once and for all. On October 23, 1983, Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer met in what would be called the Last Battle of Atlanta, a completely enclosed, no-rules steel cage match. This wasn't a regular cage match where you could escape through the door or over the top. This was a cage that was entirely sealed, and two men entered knowing only one would walk out victorious. To make it even more dramatic,
Buzz Sawyer's manager, Paul Ellering, was locked in a small cage suspended above the ring, unable to interfere, but forced to watch as his man went to war. The match was everything fans hoped for: brutal, bloody, and genuinely unpredictable. After nearly 2 years of escalating violence, this was the definitive conclusion to one of wrestling's most heated rivalries. What makes the last Battle of Atlanta so significant is that it set the template for blow-off matches in major feuds. The concept of completely enclosing a cage, adding stipulations to prevent interference, and marketing it as the absolute final encounter, all of these elements became standard practice in wrestling. Tommy Rich versus Buzz Sawyer has largely been forgotten because it was so regional. Georgia Championship Wrestling was huge in the South, but didn't have the national reach of WWF. Additionally, Buzz Sawyer's career was cut short by personal demons and tragedy, preventing him from achieving mainstream recognition. But make no mistake, if you ask anyone who lived through Southern wrestling in the early 80s, they'll tell you that Tommy Rich versus Buzz Sawyer was the absolute peak of territorial wrestling violence. The last Battle of Atlanta was the perfect culmination of a perfect rivalry: personal, brutal, and unforgettable. This rivalry is number 1 on our list because it represents everything that made territorial wrestling special: genuine heat, no regard for safety, and storytelling that made audiences believe every moment was real. It's the most forgotten rivalry that deserves to be remembered.
And there you have it. 15 forgotten wrestling rivalries that shaped everything you know about modern wrestling. From Vern Gagne's technical battles to the last Battle of Atlanta's enclosed violence, these rivalries proved that wrestling at its best is about emotion, storytelling, and making audiences genuinely care. These stories have faded from mainstream memory, but their influence is everywhere. Every cage match you've ever seen owes something to Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer. Every student versus mentor angle references Larry Zbyszko and Bruno Sammartino. Every technical classic echoes Jack Briscoe and Dory Funk Jr. If you enjoyed this deep dive into wrestling's forgotten history, make sure you're subscribed to the Wrestleverse. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you never miss another video. We're dedicated to uncovering the hidden stories that made wrestling the incredible art form it is today. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these rivalries surprised you the most. Are there any forgotten feuds you think should have made this list? I read every comment and love hearing from fellow wrestling historians. Until next time, this has been the Wrestleverse, keeping wrestling history alive one story at a time. I'll see you in the next video.